That you know about the very simple way that what is this paper about. So this paper actually explores how network security can be enhanced by integrating software defined perimeter with software defined networking. Actually, defined networking is already used in many of the environments. So right now there are some drawbacks or there are some bottlenecks in software defined networking. So that's why researchers actually want to create more secure and scalable SDN network. So that's why SDP, which is software defined perimeter, it actually ensures that only authenticated users can access services within a network by requiring a secure authorization request before granting access. So here in this environment, if I talk about here any of the host, once it will be trying to access the network, then this host will obviously have first process through authentication process, or even this host should be configured in such a way that it need to make the secure, like some security framework should be working in this host. So the process actually begins with the client send an encrypted authentication request, and then this request passes through SDP gateway, or we can say that that gateway could also be work as a server, and then SDP gateway verifies before setting up access rules dynamically. So for that, it could be some MAC address based authentication, IP based authentication, or any of the security policies. As you know that in your computer, many of the security policies could be applied. So we can apply any type of security policies for that. So the process actually starts for authentication request, and then the SDP gateway actually verifies before setting up access, and then adds the rules, any of the rules which could be applied. So this research actually examines two access models. One is direct access through the controller, and other is access via secure gateway. So two things, like these are some clients, these are some services, and this is controller, and these are these some applications APIs, like the applications which are running in the controller. So now one thing is that, and these are SDN switches which we are using, open virtual switches. So one controller is actually used here, clients are used, and server is again used. So this research actually telling about one is direct access and other is using the gateway. Two things we can do here, and here all of these things are actually mentioned simply. You are getting my
Huh.
point?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So through extensive testing in virtualized network, here they made virtualized network test bed. So for that they have used, I will tell you step by step, but right now I'm just summarizing overall, so that's why a general idea should be and a sketch should be in your mind. So here they created a test bed where they add these type of virtual machines and the things. So this is overall, this setup is called the test bed. So the paper actually demonstrates that this combined approach effectively mitigates cyber threats such as denial of service attack, port scanning attacks, and even under attack, the STP SDN system successfully maintains network availability and ensure that the traffic can pass through. So this is the thing actually, that either the if some attack is performed, then even the traffic should remain passed. The traffic should not be affected with that specific attack. So after performing this attack, the performance analysis indicates that the framework introduces the minimal latency, and minimal latency in a sense that even the system, the controller is under attack, but during with the help of STP gateway, the malicious traffic is dropped, but the original traffic is remained same. So that's why the study highlights that the need of further research is also required, and also need to protect the SDN controller, so that if any indirect attacks confirms, then STP SDN controller should remain more modified, more good, and it could be more beneficial, so that any of the unauthorized user should not access the network privileges. So this is actually overall working of this paper, where we have controller, we have server, we have client, and then we have some host. Either that could be affected, that could be secure one, and that could be for the attacker side as well. So if we talk about simple step by step, so this was actually the overall abstract or general purpose, where these things were mentioned for SDN-SDP framework, and then you mentioned about DoS attack and the port scanning attack, and it clarifies that the network is remain stable under the attack as well. So after that, if we simply talk about in summarized way about the introduction of this paper, so in the introduction actually this explains the software defined networking is widely used because it makes network easier to manage. As you can easily see that in our previous work, we were managing everything from the controller. We have no need to configure every switch or the things. We will easily handling the flow rules in the switch. We were performing some attacks, and we are mitigating all of those with the help of controller. So this is the thing actually also mentioned in this introduction paragraph, that it is easier to manage and reduce costs. So however, SDN has security risks, obviously, because hackers attacks the controllers directly, steals data, shutting down the network, or even any of the attack can be performed. To solve this, some authors propose some SDP framework where how to secure SDN actually, which ensures only trusted users can access the network. And the goal is to make the SDN more secure by integrating SDP and testing its effectiveness. So this is the general thing generally discussed in the introduction paragraph. So you got it?
Mhm.
Okay. So after that, here in the related work, this is just a comparative analysis of some previous research papers. We had already did that before, but in very simple way, if I talk about, so this related work section actually, it reviews some previous research on SDN security, and it explains how SDN separates network control from physical device. First of all, this is it is initially mentioning that what is the concept of SDN, which separates overall
Oh,
network. uh, uh, Sorry.
okay, yeah, yeah, with you.
Okay, okay. So it first of all it explains the SDN separates network control from physical devices. Physical devices like as you know that in the data center or in traditional network, every switch, every router has a data plane and the control plane. But here in SDN environment, all the control plane is just with the controller, and switches are just with the data plane and for the forwarding. So this is actually mentioning here initially about the simple workflow and southbound and the northbound APIs. And also, after SDN separates network control from physical device, it actually it's making it flexible but also vulnerable to attacks, because when every device have the control plane, data plane, then every device should need to compromise. But the control plane of all the devices will be at the same place, then it will be obviously easy for controller if he will attack on the if attacker if will attack on the controller, obviously he can gain more and more benefits for that, instead of basically accessing each device. So this was an important drawback of this SDN network. But obviously it is very not very easy to attack the controller, not the thing, but I am just talking on the worst case which is mentioned in this paper. So many researchers have suggested firewalls, encryptions, machine learning based security for SDN, but these solutions actually consume too much resources and are not effective against the large scale attacks like DDoS attack, those things, what sort of attack could be occur. So that's why all of those things, adding firewalls, adding some security policies, or adding some encryption or machine learning, this means that to add something new from here. So that's why it was not too much good suggestion. All of these things are actually mentioned here. Yeah, virtualization network, IDS systems are mentioned in, and then machine learning and ST and security. These things are generally discussed, and that's why because all of these things need to integrate from here. So these solutions are obviously too much, it takes too much resources and not effective in large scale networks. So that's why the author conclude that the new security framework like SDP is needed. At the end of this here, they mentioned that obviously here they are again mentioned about machine learning security. So at the end they mentioned that there some security framework is required so that we could not add anything like not to add dedicated machine and in machine learning no need to basically add some dedicated server. Instead of that, there's need to basically built in adding some features like what we'll be doing in SDP. In SDP we will be adding some extra level of policies on the clients, extra level of policies, extra level of code on the server. Instead of making those hosts as it is, we'll be adding some more security policies inside that. And then we'll be adding some IP schemes there, special IP schemes. And then the security controller will be onboarding those devices. So instead of adding some another device just inside the already running network, we'll be adding some secure policies, some framework. Some framework means some extra level of policies, so that instead of investing too much, we can make the built-in secure network as it is with the cost effectiveness. So this was actually mentioned whole in the related work of the paper. You got it?
Yeah.
That's perfect. And then about software defined perimeter framework. What is software defined perimeter? It is actually mentioned. So this is the section where it introduces SDP, that a security model that hides network resources until a user is authenticated. If the user will not authenticate, it will not allow access. When it will be authenticate, it will be allowed access. Then how it will be authenticate? There will be some commands, some programs which we need to done. You are aware of, if we talk about generally with an example, you are aware of ISO 27001 certification,
No.
ISO certification.
What about this?
And just to tell you the basic concept that is not related to this one, but in ISO, when any company, any organization, any cybersecurity organization got ISO certified, then any of the user inside that organization, that laptop is also ISO certified. Means that there is a special program, special softwares installed in that host. Like if I tell you an example, that if I talk about my office laptop, I am working in an organization which is ISO certified. So the laptop which is provided by that company to me, I cannot add USB to that laptop. I cannot use any desk on that laptop. I cannot install Skype on that
Yeah, yeah.
laptop
It's called
because
what?
it is ISO certified, ISO 20000 27001 certified.
Okay.
So it's same thing in over SDP environment, which where we'll be running client security and security controller, and these devices will be adding some security policies inside that, that like hash based security or any sort of security. But for us, we'll talk about hash based, some authentication code. When that code will be matching between the server and the client, then it will execute. Otherwise, it will not execute. So this will be over SDP framework. So how this SDP framework works? It actually, when a user wants to connect to the network, they must first send a single packet, and for authorization, that is called SPA. Here's it's mentioned. This one, initialization host, open packet, and then it sends SPA. SPA means it's basically single packet for authorization. Okay, SPA means single packet authorization it sends. Then what happened? If approved, then a secure TLS encrypted connection is created. If it
Hmm?
will be happened, then a secure encrypted and authenticated connection will be created. And with the main components, what will be its main components? One will be IH initialization host, basically the client which is trying to connect to the services, that will be called initialization host. Then accepting host, AH, that is AH host, we can say host as well, it can say gateway as well. This is the gateway that grants access. And then STP controller or SDN, any of the, we can all collectively name that security controller, CTRL,
Mhm.
security control, that will be working as STN and the STP controller. The system that, it is the system that will verify users before allowing access, either need to provide the access or not. And beside that, open TCP connection, mutual TLS handshake, open connection request, all of these things will be going on. So this is the basic concept of SDP as well. And in this research, the proposed STP connection overview, I have told you STP protection. For that, they mentioned IK, Internet Security Exchange, and Internet Key Exchange, and TLS transport layer security they have mentioned, so that any of the man in the middle attack, port scanning attack should be discouraged. So this is just a general concept of SDP. Now, after that, here mentioned the proposed STP integrated architecture. So here, basically in this section, actually it explains that how STP is combined with SDN to make network more secure. This is basically the contribution of that author in this paper, that how they integrated SDP with SDN, then how they make it more secure. So for that, they have explained how SDP is combined with SDN, and for that, here this architecture is actually used where the STP gateway blocks all connection until authentication is successful. This is first of uh, first and foremost important thing. So one is this network, we can consider only this network. This is gateway, this is client, this is switch, and this is controller. This is overall one environment. He mentioned two networks, but we can deploy the same in one network as well. And we can also add two same networks like this one. Here, this is the area where these are some services, this is some gateway, and these are some clients or the hosts. These needs to connect to these services. So for that, this gateway, the STP gateway, that blocks all the connection until authentication is successful. So how it will authenticate? There will be some security code will be added in these clients, so that once that code matches initialization host, authentication host. So then both of the code, either hash mac or any of the code will be connected or will be matched between these two devices. Then it will be allowed to pass that and go to from switch to these controller or any of the services which it needs to be accept. So once a user is verified, then the SDN controller dynamically sets up network traffic rules to allow access. So two different implementation choices are discussed here in this paper. One is client to gateway model, that is basically chosen approach, that one I have mentioned right now, client to gateway approach. And other is client to server model, which I have initially told you about. Each server handles authentication, but this is less secure because servers can still attack directly. So both any of these techniques basically can be used in the research. In this paper the author has actually mentioned, what are those two? Client to
One of
gateway
them.
and client to server. This one. In this implementation, the server is service is hidden behind the gateway, and client to server authentication host basically module is installed directly to the server. These are the two services which are actually used. You got it?
Client to gateway or client to server. What's difference
Yeah.
between them?
In client to gateway model, this is chosen approach. This approach is used in this paper. Okay. And what
Mm.
is this approach? This approach says that the gateway hides backend services and only allows trusted users to access them. Like all the services are behind that gateway, and that gateway is not allowed until and unless that hash will not match between this host and the client. And what is other client to server model? That is each server handles authentication. Like instead of this gateway, this server directly communicates with this client and will assign the services. This gateway bypass here in this case. One is client to gateway model, other is client to server model. In client to gateway model, for any of the host to get the services, he needs to get authentication from this gateway.
Gateway.
This is client to gateway model. And in
But you
client
said
to server,
hide.
yeah,
How
and
can one hide?
this gateway is hide, obviously this gateway hide these services until and
Uh,
unless it will be authenticated. When this host will be
uh,
authenticated, then he will allow the services. This is mentioned in the paper. Got my point?
yeah, yeah.
And in client to server model, each server handles authentication, but this is less secure because servers can still be attacked directly. Because so in fact for that, he actually simply mentioned that gateway, if we add some gateway or STP server between that, so it will be beneficial for the user or for that infrastructure or the organization to have the more secure network.
Uh, طيب, we want to implement this, Sayed. We want to implement it. We want to see it in our Mininet. How?
You, yeah, for that I have that. I will show you later about how it works actually in the Mininet.
يلا, we
And
want to
how
finish. Huh?
sorry,
we wanna finish يعني we wanna implement these things عشان يعني we have finished.
I have already implemented maximum of these, so that's why I'm just telling you, making your
Hmm.
background, and then I will set up all this data in your system, and I will troubleshoot, and then I will hand over to you. I know we will have to
والله
finish
I
all
am
these.
very eager. I am very eager to see this. والله العظيم.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So to be very honest, in let me check either my office PC is accessible today right now server where I have implemented. I tried it today as well daytime. So, most of the things are, if that server is accessible, so that's right now I will do access that through any desk, and I will make it. Okay. So after that, let's complete the paper as well. And now flow control and communication. So in this section, actually this is mentioning that how STP and SDN components work together when a client tries to access the network. So these are some steps: authentication and service request, and then the scenarios are mentioned here. So first of all, authentication process. First of all, if we talk about in this flow control, how this flow is basically created, so is mentioning about both the scenarios. For the scenario one, where gateway is used, and for the scenario two, where directly server is gonna be installed. So in this scenario, authentication process, actually first of all, first step is authentication process. And in authentication process, what will happen? The client first sends a secure authentication request to STP controller, and if the client is verified, then STP gateway updates firewall rules to allow traffic. And then network access process. Second thing, the SDN controller sets up a flow rules on the network switches to direct traffic only to the authorized users, not unauthorized users. And if an unauthorized request is detected, the traffic is blocked automatically. This is overall the working of STP. Very simple way if we talk about.
Could you repeat this point, please?
Like, if SDN controller sets up flow rules on the network switches to direct traffic only to the authorized users, and if an unauthorized request is detected, then traffic is blocked automatically. So this is actually the working, like
All,
in
all.
simple words, to allow authorized people and to deny unauthorized people or the packets or the requests.
Hmm. But this command from the controller or from the switch or the from server or
We controller will be actually overall security framework, but we will have to install some flows and some policies in our client, some of them in the server. So once these client and the server policies will match, then both of these will be able to connect each other. Otherwise they will not be able to connect each other. This is the thing. Actually this is the thing. The main thing is that to communicating between server and the client. Overall in STP environment, here you can see every time there is a talking about server. Server mean where services are present, and the clients need to require communication between clients and server. No other thing is discussed here. Controller is actually overall providing the communication challenges and these things. What we need to make sure, we need to make sure secure communication between clients and the services. This
يعني we
is
are
actually, this is actually the
we,
challenge in STP.
طيب يعني we are now make a protection from the from the client. We are not make any protection from the to the controller. Are we doing
Control,
just
yeah,
yeah.
obviously controller will be there. Controller will already obviously be secure, but not as that much role will be played by the controller as that much will be the client. But obviously everything, every process, every communication will be passing through the controller. So that's why making the controller to a secure framework, in any of the secure framework, every flow, everything will be handled by that controller. So obviously we'll have to make that controller as that much secure as we are working on the client and the service as well. So SDP actually, this is every time you listen that it is a framework. So in framework nothing is insecure, everything is secure. That's why we can't say that we are not going to make the controller secure, we are not going to make server secure, gateway, everything will be secure here in this environment.
طيب.
Okay.
Okay.
And
طيب you know طيب you know what does
uh,
طيب mean?
तो ये
طيب.
मीन चलो ठीक है आगे चलें, means it's good, let's move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay, then test bed and the performance evaluation. This is discussed here. So here basically how authors basically tested the security framework using virtual lab environment with in his system he used OpenDaylight and Open Virtual Switch and framework of SDP. He used these the types of machines. So here he has mentioned about these things about the they measured network performance, and they test the two types of cyber attacks. First, denial of service attack, and then port scanning attack. But first they perform this without as specific STP like pure STP framework. And the same thing we already did, that you know how to perform denial of service attack, you know how to perform port scanning attack, tries to find the open network ports and tries to overload the network. So you can do both of these things, right?
إن شاء الله.
Yeah, the same, almost the same command here already used. hping 3 minus source to destination any of the port with some flags here mentioned. We have used overround command, they use their command, but both of these have some same purpose. So we already did that, alhamdulillah. We already achieved these things about port scanning attack, about DDoS attack, and these
Yeah,
things.
that's
So
for
for
testing. Yeah, we finished testing, but we still and enhancing the security.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
also he, and also they in this paper that they mentioned that they only use this command to attack the server, and we write some APIs application to stop the attack and to detect that attack. So we can write a full research paper on that as well, because I did a lot of time to make that API and that working. That is another contribution actually. I haven't used that from anywhere else, I made that myself with my team. So that's why that is again an contribution. You can see, I can teach you once more about that APIs. You can inform your supervisor that this, you can write a full research paper on that actually, because this is not done before, that how to
Mhm.
instead of that client server infrastructure, you can directly stop that unauthorized packets and the request using your gateway. So that is another STP environment actually. This is the
Mhm.
thing.
Okay, why not? Okay, والله it's a good idea. إن شاء الله I will inform this to my supervisor to see the result, and
Yeah,
إن
yeah,
شاء الله will be good and benefit.
yeah. Then after that, he just analyzed the result and discussed the conclusion. So he performed DoS attack test. He mentioned that without STP, the attack shut down the network, but with STP, the network was almost not fully up, but 70 to 75% of the network was working here. Currently 75% of the legitimate traffic was working. He is mentioning that when we were performing DDoS attack or any of the attack in the system without SDP, then the system was totally down, goes to zero. But when we are performing this attack with SDP, when we have security environment, then 70%, 75% of our traffic was working fine. So this is the thing they did, and we already performed this in our port scanning attack, that other traffic was going fine, but only attack traffic was going drop. So that's why that 25% traffic is going drop here. When we were performing a port scanning attack and we are running port scanning detector and mitigator API, then only normal traffic was going in the network and attacker traffic was going down. So this is SDP actually. Was the SDP framework. And but right now for you actually, you need this type of environment where we have client, we have server, we have authentication host, and we have security controller. So we have that as well, so no worry about that. We'll deploy the same inshallah as well.
طيب have you
And
finished يعني Mr. Said the summary for the paper for this paper?
yeah,
If you have finished,
uh,
please share
uh,
it to me.
I had written about 60 to 70%, but after this class I will complete and I will share that with you. Okay.
Mhm. Okay, okay, no
And
problem.
okay, so after that, here in discussion, it is actually mentioned the main high success of the framework which this author used in their research, and how it effectively protects the SDN network. It actually mentioned that, however, it notes that the SDN controller is still vulnerable to indirect attacks that could overwhelm its processing power. So here they mentioned that in future, like in future, it should be focused on securing SDN controller itself to create fully protected SDN system, because they haven't controlled their environment with SDN controller. They make the connectivity secure between secure server and the client. So that's why they mention in their future work that it needs to secure the controller from the attack, which
Oh,
we did already did. I haven't read that paper before in to my depth, but the thing which they mention in their future work, we already did that to secure the controller from those attacks directly instead of securing the host and the server. So if I would be there in front of your supervisor, so I can satisfy them very much that we already achieved too much things. But it's
alhamdulillah.
okay. You will satisfy them as well, inshallah.
طيب إن شاء الله. Do you remember when we did and the result was those attack? I would like to implement it in my laptop. I want to see this results. I want to see my supervisor this results. Do you
Okay.
remember when they said those attack?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was يعني amazing. You will impressed about these things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you haven't informed them about that right till now,
Yeah,
right?
I've told him about this, but we haven't say him the or we haven't show him the result with those attack.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay, so we can implement that in your system whenever you want, so that actually we have already implemented, and right now what we'll do some practice. You will do some practice in front of me so that
yeah,
you can explain that in a good way to your supervisor. Yeah, this is
okay.
this is the thing you want from me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so okay, and after that, after this discussion, this is the conclusion, the future research. So in the conclusion and the future work, this section actually summarize overall study findings that SDP and SDN integration enhances network security while keeping performance high, and the framework actually successfully blocks unauthorized access, prevents network scanning and DoS, DDoS attacks, and in here in mm, yeah. And here in future work, they mentioned that we should focus on improving the security of SDN controllers to make the framework even more secure. Like instead of just focusing on clients and the server and doing some code between those, You can make the controller more secure by adding more and more APIs and updating that APIs so that it could work more and more secure. So this is all about this paper. I hope so you have a good idea on this. And if
Yeah.
I haven't
And
explained that good, or if you have a further question, then please ask. I'm ready to answer.
لا الحمد لله everything good وإن شاء الله يعني everything it was clear for me about the in this picture have you seen in this picture and red color how the uh, establish the connection then authorized then yeah like this.
Okay, that's fine. Sounds good. This is very good thing.
You want to access my system?